Okay, so numbers seem to be more or less stable. So let's get going. First, some housekeeping. Just some best practices. Make sure you engage. If you haven't done so yet, introduce yourself in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box where you can put your questions that we will answer later during the Q&A session. And also just be respectful and mindful with each other. All contributions are valued. There's no silly questions today. And we probably have different people from different backgrounds. So be kind to each other. Do be aware that the webinar is being recorded and will be shared. So make sure you protect any sensitive information and don't put those in the chat boxes, please. Before we get started with some hopefully very useful career talks for you all, I'm going to quickly introduce myself. I'm your host today. I'm Chantal. I will also be one of the speakers. So you'll hear a little bit more about me later on and my career journey. But we'll get started with a quick introduction to the Faraday Institution, which is the institution that put all of this together today. So the Faraday Institution is basically the institution that kind of coordinates a lot of the battery research happening in the UK and bringing together industry partners and academic researchers to kind of work on driving the battery revolution. We have different levels in the academic setting, from principal investigators, project leads, also over 180 postdoctoral researchers and over 180 PhD students. So more than 500 people and researchers from many disciplines. And leveling up has also been really important for the Faraday Institution. We have over 30% of female representation, and there's generally also a lot of young people with over 74% of under 40s. And if you've never worked on batteries before, don't worry. Around 45% of people working with the Faraday or in the Faraday are actually new to battery research. And we can use people from any sort of backgrounds and fields. So the technical targets that Faraday has set span across these. So one of the more obvious ones is obviously we want to reduce the cost of batteries. We want to increase the energy density and the power density to improve their performance and make sure that, the first life lasts as long as possible. We also really want to make sure they're as safe as they can possibly be, which also enables us to, operate at a bigger variety of temperatures. One of the big things is recyclability and making sure we're very conscious about the resources we're using, for which predictability and having models that can help understand battery research, but also battery modeling systems on different scales are really important because we can save some resources with that as well and get a lot of new insights. So I'm quickly, because I know people come from a lot of different backgrounds. I'm going to introduce the concept of a battery and how it works. So we have our electrodes, the anode and cathode, which in the standard lithium-ion battery is graphite and a layered lithium metal oxide. We have a separator going through the electrolyte, separating our two electrodes, and then a circuit going on the outside. And basically, when we're charging and discharging our battery, both anode and cathode are actually layered materials. They're slightly different in terms of the structure, but the principle is the same. And our lithiums is basically moved out of the layers when we're discharging a battery and using it. It's moved out of the anode and pushed through the electrolyte over to the cathode where it intercalates. And then the electrons go around the electric circuit and connect back with your lithium ions. And when you're charging, that's the one that you actually need to put energy in. The same thing happens just on the other side. So before we fully kick off, the Faraday is also very keen on doing events like this today, inspiring the next generation and providing training by doing STEM outreach, putting on, for example, the Battery Day. And there's training courses for different career stages. So there's the Faraday Undergraduate Summer Experience of Youth Internships, which you will hear more about today. There's PhD training programs, but also for professionals. There's trainings and development help. And also one other thing that's very important to the Faraday is supporting and initiating EDI initiatives to make sure everyone feels welcome and included in this community. So I am now going to hand over. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Alan, who has done an MChem, an integrated master's in chemistry at the University of Oxford, and is now doing a PhD at Imperial College London. And he will hopefully tell you more about his experience in the battery sector. Over to you, Alan.
Hi, everyone. Thanks very much, Chantal, for the lovely introduction. You've caught me horribly off guard. I seem to be at the very end of my presentation, so no spoilers here, everyone. Um, so yeah, as I was introduced, my name is Alan. I'm a first year PhD student at the Imperial College London, and I'm a former Fuse intern with the Faraday Institution. And I've been asked today to come here, talk to you guys a little bit about the battery industry, and as well as my decisions in starting a career in batteries in the UK. So we're going to cover a little bit about myself and the project that I'm doing during my PhD. I'm going to talk about the importance of battery research, as well as what I did as a kind of Fuse intern, the experience I gained from that, and then how that led me to choose to do a PhD and potentially a little bit of advice for starting a career, be that in batteries or elsewhere. So, about me. I started my undergraduate degree in 2020. And then in summer of 2022, I was a Fuse intern, still again at the University of Oxford, which I had a really fantastic time doing. And that led me to organize an independent internship at the University of California, Santa Barbara, where I continued to work on battery research. I graduated in summer of 2024, took a year out to do a little bit of travel, a little bit of kind of odd jobs and work, and then I began my PhD studies at Imperial in October 2025. So the project that I'm working on is on cathode materials for sodium-ion batteries, which is a very similar kind of analogous technology to the lithium-ion batteries that we work on now. They compromise a little bit on performance, but they have advantages in terms of cost and sustainability. I'm using mixed experimental and computational approach, mostly experimental at the time being, to understand how kind of the composition, the content of your battery material affects how it's structured and how it performs in a real cell application. And I'm focusing on this promising silicate material. But to talk to you a little bit more about why battery research is important, I want to divide this into kind of two sections, that being why batteries are kind of important to society at large and why we still need to do more work on them. So, in terms of why batteries continue to be important, obviously we all know that we're at risk of damaging our climate through continued fossil fuel and greenhouse gas emissions. And in order to move away from that form of energy generation, it's necessary to move towards more sustainable renewable sources, which have the drawback of potentially being intermittent. So we need a kind of a large energy storage capacity to facilitate the kind of green transition. It's also very important to be able to, as a nation, generate your own energy. It's good for kind of national security, and you don't have to look far to see examples of where kind of your energy industry being dependent on global shipping might be a drawback. And then obviously public health as well. I'm sure any of you who've ever kind of stood near a motorway wish you didn't have to breathe all of that in. So that's another kind of advantage to moving, but from kind of internal combustion engine transport to battery electric vehicles. So that's all great, but in terms of why we need to keep working on it, you may have heard how battery materials have kind of some challenges in terms of the sustainability and the cost of their materials. So doing research to improve production techniques and using cheaper and more sustainable materials would be a massive, massive positive impact on the industry. And improving the performance just means you get kind of more bang for your buck, so to speak. It's also just a massive economic opportunity to have the best batteries on the market. And with other things like battery recycling as well, it's going to become a very prominent industry in the next 10 to 20 years. So it's a good time to be getting involved with batteries, basically. Um, as a Fuse intern myself, I worked with Professor Mauro Pasta at the Department of Materials at Oxford, and we were characterizing the thermodynamic and transport properties of some battery electrolytes, both for lithium ion and potassium ion batteries. I was kind of supervised mostly by a single PhD student, but I worked alongside a lot of Mauro's other students and some of his postdoctoral researchers as well. So it was a really kind of fulfilling and interesting experience. These were the main kind of parameters that we were characterizing: the ionic conductivity, which is the mobility of the lithium ions with respect to kind of the electric field that they're in; the thermodynamic factor, which is the measure of non-ideality of an electrolyte. So it's how the chemical activity of the ions changes depending on the concentration of them; the transference number, which is the fraction of the current in the electrolyte that's carried by the kind of the lithium or the potassium positive species; and then the diffusion coefficient, which is the mobility of the ion with respect to kind of differences or a gradient in the concentration. And having kind of measured all of these things, we were able to demonstrate that there were better transport properties for potassium ions than lithium ions for this particular example. And then we used a Python code called PyBAM, which I believe was either developed by or in collaboration with the Faraday Institution. We used it to model fast charging performance and demonstrate how this potassium ion electrolyte performs better in relative terms. In terms of what I got out of that personally, I developed a whole lot of practical lab experience, which stood me in good stead throughout the rest of my undergraduate degree, in the master's research that I've been doing, and in the PhD that I've done or that I've undertaken since. Exposure to new ideas and advanced research. I attended a lot of fantastic talks, which were really motivational, inspirational to me, as well as just kind of speaking to other researchers in the group, attending group meetings. It really kind of broadened my horizons as a scientist. And I got to meet a lot of fantastically intelligent people who have gone on to do fascinating things. And I've kind of, by remaining in contact with them, it's been a massive sort of leg up for my career. I also was fortunate enough to be published during my time in my internship, which is certainly not a guarantee, but it happened for me. So it can happen for other people as well. And that's obviously it's very gratifying as a scientist, but it's also a big kind of leg up in a career. And I really enjoyed myself as well, which is not to be underestimated as a factor. To kind of reiterate on these things, it was a talk that I attended during my internship that actually led me to be more interested in kind of battery cathode materials. It's why I then pursued an independent internship in Santa Barbara. And I think having been a Fuse intern really strengthened the application that I made for that. To reiterate on networking, you can see these are all people who I met during my Fuse internship, who were basically all PhDs and postdocs then. And since then, you can see that I'm now connected to 4 principal investigators, so kind of research group leaders across different nations, a postdoc in Stanford, people working in industry in the UK and the US, and some really interesting people doing kind of policy and law work, both in France and the UK. So kind of being in contact with these people and having the LinkedIn connection means that a lot of doors can open for a person, and it's a really important kind of aspect of starting a career in this day and age. So it was very fortunate that I was able to um, get into contact with all of these people, all thanks to the Faraday Institution. And it was all those experiences that kind of pushed me to take the decision to decide to do a PhD. I was motivated by the prospect of kind of solving tangible real world problems through my research. It's kind of it's very hands-on. You know what the goal is, you know what the kind of desired outcome is, and that kind of really helps me be motivated in my day-to-day life. It's kind of a really great opportunity to develop both hard and soft skills. So I've grown as a kind of communicator, science communicator. I hope you'll think a presenter as well. But also I've developed really strong kind of chemistry, electrochemistry, engineering skills that I kind of are gratifying to develop, but also stand you in good stead going forwards. And it's just a real blessing to work with such intelligent people as you do when you work in these fields. Um, so that's been fantastic. And it's a great sort of leg up for a successful career in academia, industry, or indeed um, anything else. Um, so yeah, if I had to sort of summarize everything and give some advice to people watching who might be starting their careers or thinking about their next steps, I'd say try as much as you can. There's no substitute for experience in making decisions about your future. So try whatever you can and find mentors, find people who are kind of going to be in your corner and can give you good advice and have sort of taken some of these steps before. Build networks, get to know people around you, because they'll be able to expose you to new ideas and new opportunities as well. And then really kind of read about whatever you can and capitalize on the opportunities that you're presented at university. So I know Faraday has some opportunities coming up that you wouldn't want to miss, but also kind of careers fairs, things that your university careers service will be offering you are fantastic opportunities to engage with career development. So I hope that's been helpful and informative rather. Um, but regardless, thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to hear any questions you might have at the end of the event.
Thank you so much for a very interesting and insightful talk. Yes, we do Q&As at the end. So if you have any questions from this talk, please put them in the Q&A chat box, and the three of us will answer them towards the end. So we'll move on to the next talk now. The next talk is slightly different. I'm going to give over to Christian in a second, who did mechanical engineering at Imperial College London, but is now a senior battery engineer at a company called About Energy, and will tell you more about his career journey and how he got there. Over to you, Christian.
Thank you for that kind introduction. I'll just share my screen. All right. So yeah, as Chantal said, I'm gonna sort of come at this from a slightly different angle because I went straight from a master's degree into the battery industry. And that's not to say that that is in any way better or worse than what Alan did. It's simply a different route into the battery industry. And the reality is that in order to solve the challenges that lie ahead, we really need sort of people who go down both paths. We need people who push sort of the cutting edge of research, and we need people who sort of fill those junior roles in those junior positions in industry and address that skills shortage that we have at the moment. And so I want to give a very quick introduction of About Energy, the company that I work for. So we are a London-based company, and we are really a testing lab and a model development company. So we build and test battery cells to generate battery models that hopefully drive the adoption of next generation batteries. And so what we do is we take in these battery cells into our lab, we take them apart. You can see a picture of a glove box in the top left here on the slide, just an inert environment in which you can take apart battery cells. So we take these battery cells in, we take them apart, we measure everything you can possibly measure on them, and then we use that data to build battery models. And these digital models can be used to later on design battery systems or to control them. And so we as a company sort of sit in between the battery cell manufacturers on the left here and the battery system builders or designers and the EV companies or the aerospace companies that need batteries. So we sit in between these two and we act as a bit of a third party verifier of battery cell performance because our models can be used to appraise the performance of a battery cell. They can also be used to compare different battery cells against each other. And we also have this platform, online platform called The Vault, where customers can access that information and can download models and can also do online simulations of battery cells. But enough about the company I work for. This is the slide that really summarizes my trajectory and my career path. And yeah, it is a bit different to the typical path of going into a PhD first before going into industry. And there's a couple of things I sort of intentionally did to try and get into the battery industry straight away. So yeah, I started my degree at Imperial in 2019, and sort of from the get-go, I was sort of clear for myself that I really wanted to make sure of all of the opportunities that presented themselves at Imperial outside of my degree. And I guess I sort of strategized around that a bit, and I sort of chose an area that excited me the most. And that to me was battery cells. They are an incredibly sort of multi-physics, complex problem to solve. They have, of course, a lot of future importance. And yeah, simply the sheer scale of the problems that required solving, that's what really excited me. And so I started doing undergraduate research. And undergraduate research outside of my degree, of course, I did a study on sort of electrical resistance welded connections between lithium-ion battery cells, trying to find the optimal settings for welding battery cells in a very consistent way. Then later on, I did project work on a battery pack cooling system. This was actually part of my degree, this project work, but again, I chose intentionally a project that would relate to my interests and sort of my strategic plan of becoming a battery engineer, because I knew that my syllabus at the time didn't have as much battery content. It didn't have as much battery knowledge that I was going to gain throughout sort of studying the degree. So I had to sort of look where I could pick that up elsewhere. And one of the very big elements of that was also Formula Student to me. So Formula Student, I've got another separate slide on that in a second as well. It's a student competition where students build their own race cars and race them against each other. And that's really critical for me because there I not only got to pick up battery knowledge and battery sort of understanding, but also these additional soft skills that employers later on really look for when trying to hire engineers. Yeah, there's a little picture of me holding up one of the modules there. But this work with the Formula Student team at my university also then teed me up really well for getting an internship at a company called Rimac Technology. That is a Croatian company, and they build hypercars, so really, really fast electric cars. And what not many people know is that they're also a tier one automotive supplier. And so interning at that company got me sort of a bit of a window into the world of EVs. Large organizations and large companies as well. Rimac Technology at the time was a pretty big company for me. And I really wanted something that was sort of going to juxtapose to that. And that was trying to look for an opportunity at a startup, a much smaller company as well, to compare the two worlds, the established corporate and the small startups. And that's really what I got when I looked for my master's opportunity, and I managed to get sponsored by a company called Ionetic, which is an Imperial College London startup spinout. They build battery packs sort of for niche vehicle applications. So your small electric buses, basically, automotive applications for where they have very small counts of vehicles that they produce. And then I graduated in 2023, and all of these different opportunities together set me up for being able to apply for positions where I was very much competing against PhD graduates as well. But because I got that exposure to industry throughout my degree. I got these opportunities where I managed to build skills on top of my battery understanding and battery knowledge. I think that's what ended up helping me successfully applying at About Energy and becoming a simulation engineer there, where I've been working ever since. And so I think some takeaways from that are to sort of kind of pick and choose a bit of a specialization as early as you can. Because once you know what area you're interested in, once you know what you're passionate about, it helps to make all of these decisions that can then build up to a resume and a CV that is attractive to employers. I think we're going to echo sort of the same feedback throughout the separate talks, but making the most of your opportunities, making the most of anything that is happening outside of your degree as well. That's really what's going to set you apart from all these other applicants when it later on comes to applying for jobs. And then, of course, using your university's network. The content of your degree and what you're being taught is the same at almost every university. What is really the difference between going to the specific university you are going to or any other university is the network that you can build. It's the opportunities you've got. And the Faraday Institution is very much a part of that network of opportunities. And so my aspirations going on for this career are to just build a career in the energy sector, the broader energy sector, by sort of leveraging that engineering understanding of lithium-ion battery cells and data science skills that I've been building throughout working in About Energy. Then I promised a short slide on Formula Student because I think it is very, very important. The Faraday Institution, they support Formula Student as well. It's a engineering competition that is very practical, very hands-on. And really, I titled this slide Student Motorsport Competitions because these student competitions, they span the whole range of motorsport. You've got electric bike competitions, you've got electric car competitions, electric boat competitions, almost anything you can think of. And these competitions help you insofar that they are evidence of passion and interest and also perseverance because you're a part of these teams for quite some time throughout your degree if you do decide to join full time or full on. And that's hands-on experience, as I've mentioned. You learn by doing, you learn by building these vehicles and really understanding these systems as a consequence. And then you build all of these interpersonal skills, these management skills that come with working in a team that has a structured hierarchy and that is very, very similar to a final sort of industry role. And then ultimately, that's what gives you that credibility when employers go looking for young, bright engineers. And I want to add a quick note about Energy does sponsor student motorsport teams. So if you already are a part of one of these teams, please feel free to reach out. We currently sponsor around 60 teams in 15 different countries and 10 different student engineering competitions. And the philosophy for our sponsorship is really to remove the barriers for entry to simulations. A lot of these teams don't have the time or money to build battery models, but they still have a very big need for them because they have to design on a very short timeline and they often need to understand batteries from scratch. And so our tools help them understand models and help sort of bring their EV designs to the next level. Then a quick slide on my life as a simulation engineer at About Energy. So I think you could divide my work at About Energy into sort of these 5 different sections, where at the top here, we've got data engineering and science. There's test planning, experimental work. There's model parameterization, model development. And at the very bottom here, there's everything to do with customer interaction, sponsorship, the one that I'm in charge of for the students, and talks and conferences like this. And so on the data engineering side, we do, have a lot of data that we collect. We need to store that data in a cloud system, cloud architecture, and we need to be able to query that data and access that data easily. And so, I've been involved a lot with data processing analysis, the data pipeline itself, visualization work as well, and ultimately data-driven modeling. Then on the test planning side, we do run a ton of battery tests, and that's really where a lot of the core IP sits for About Energy. We have sort of custom proprietary testing rigs and approaches to testing battery cells where we control the battery cell's surface temperature directly using what are called Peltier elements. A lot of this research was actually developed as part of the multi-scale modeling project, which was funded and supported by the Faraday Institution. So About Energy has a lot of gratitude for the Faraday Institution, and we're very involved with the Faraday Institution because of that as well. And then on the model parameterization side, that's really the process of making the battery model, turning the raw data into usable parameters that drive a simulation that hopefully approximates the real behavior of a battery cell very, very well. And then finally, yeah, model development work. So actual scientific work on progressing the state of the art of how we model battery cells. So there's definitely quite a bit of proximity to research, despite the fact that I'm in industry. Then an additional slide I really wanted to add was a quick slide about joining a startup in particular. So I've joined a very small company over an established sort of employer for a number of reasons, and those are often personal reasons as well, and they really are different for individual people. But I wanted to sort of yeah, give these pointers anyways, for you to keep them in mind when thinking about joining either an established company or a smaller startup. So there's a certain number of advantages to joining a startup. You do get a level of responsibility and autonomy quite quickly. You get to learn a lot from very talented and experienced people around you. You have often got a very collaborative work environment because without everyone working together in the startup isn't going to go anywhere. So you tend to have a very tight-knit group of people that you work with. Then there's often potential for rapid growth and development because startups do, if they do blow up, they do grow quite quickly, and you end up, yeah, growing in your career quite quickly as well as a consequence. And of course, there is the potential for financial return. That's always an element. You are sort of taking on a bit of a risk when joining a startup, and that financial return is meant to be the reward in return for that. And finally, I do think, especially for the type of startup I've joined here, the proximity to research is really valuable. At the end of my studies, I did think about a PhD, although I had that desire to go into industry. And finding this role at this particular startup where I do get to balance being in industry and at least being very close to research a bit, that's been really, really satisfying and gratifying. The disadvantages to keep in mind are that you've got risk, often quite a high amount of pressure to get things done because you're sort of building the plane as it is, sort of as it is. Yeah, people often say crashing, but you're trying to build the plane as it is nosediving because you do have a runway. Money is not infinite. You do tend to have quite high workload. Your day-to-day work is often determined more by the company needs than personal preferences. In a PhD, for example, especially when you're choosing your PhD, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you do tend to have that freedom a bit more in terms of what research direction you want to go to, what work you want to do in your PhD. And then yeah, the people you work with become very important, maybe sometimes a bit too important, and you have that lack of guaranteed progression. Before you join a startup, I'd recommend that you ask yourself a couple of questions and you make sure that you look for people that you can learn from at the startup. You really prioritize culture fit. You consider risk, your own risk tolerance, and your ability to handle those ups and downs that will naturally occur, and that you have to be aware of the fact that you're making a bit of a bet on a company that needs to be able to solve a problem, have a solution in a market, and can reach that market. So when you're at a startup, finally, I'd recommend you stretch yourself, you understand your options agreements really well, and that you know when you would want to leave the company if things wouldn't go as planned. So you have sort of a bit of a plan in mind. If we don't raise in X years, if we don't reach X goal in Y years, then I might want to leave. These are just general pieces of advice about joining a startup. But there are quite a few startups in the battery industry and in the battery sector, so that is a very likely possibility. And they do tend to often be the places that look for sort of young, bright, talented people and engineers from universities that have been involved with the Faraday Institution as well. Then, already sort of approaching the end of my little talk, I wanted to list some free useful resources, and I think Petra might be sending the links that I've got on the left-hand side here into the chat right now. But yeah, these free useful resources are really what helped me level up my battery understanding and my battery knowledge without going into a PhD. You have to sort of teach yourself either during your degree or when actually starting your role at the company that you've applied for. So these free online resources, of which there are many, are really, really powerful and really, really useful. And if you're interested and if you have the time and you're passionate about this area, then it's one of the easiest ways to really build expertise without having to go down sort of the formal paths. Um, the first one here is a university level lecture course. The second one is a website that contains content on more system level engineering, so battery packs as a whole, not just an individual battery cell. The final one is great for being up to date with the newest developments in next generation technology. And the one at the very bottom is my LinkedIn. If you do want to reach out, if you have questions beyond this talk, I'm always sort of happy to answer them. Then on the right side of this slide, I've got one more bit of advice. It's quite a commonly given piece of advice. It's this T-shaped model, where you want to really end up focusing on building your expertise in a specific area. That's the stem of the T, and then a broad level of understanding in a whole host of areas so that you become a versatile engineer and not pigeonholed in a specific area. Yeah, final takeaways in your career are sort of early specialization, making the most of your electives, project work, undergraduate research, and internship opportunities, and using your university's network. And yeah, that's really it for my talk. Thank you for listening. Happy to take any questions later on.
Thank you so much, Christian, for this very interesting talk. Such a, yeah, good advice and good perspective on that side. I have seen there's lots of questions coming in, so very excited for the Q&A. Before we get to that, I'm gonna share my slide and tell you a little bit more. Gonna try to keep it short because you're running a bit behind schedule. But gonna try to tell you about my research experience. Okay. So as I said, I'm Chantal. I'm a PhD researcher at the moment, finally a PhD researcher at the University of Warwick. And a little bit of background. I'm originally from Germany, specifically this part close to Stuttgart, south from Germany. And I originally went to a music and art school because I enjoyed music. But in that time, actually got really passionate about STEM and had some great teachers who really supported me and decided I wanted to do chemistry, but also decided I probably want to do some form of research and I want to do it in English. And therefore, I wanted to start to study in English from the beginning and looked and applied for universities in the UK. And this is how I ended up at Loughborough University doing an integrated master's degree. This was the lovely STEM lab that they built just the year before I joined. I did really enjoy my time there, and kind of during the time, I tried to stay quite open in the beginning, but I realized my interest is particularly inorganic and solid state chemistry. So that's where I did my third year project in, and I was actually writing a literature review comparing hydrogen fuel cells and lithium-ion batteries, which was my first kind of more technical encounter with batteries. I learned a lot about them and got really passionate. So when I saw these fuse internships, which we've mentioned several times now, coming up, I applied for one and was very lucky to get one at Imperial College London. So a little bit about my fuse experience. I actually did manage to find my fuse poster. I was working on a project where we did a techno-economic analysis of lithium extraction from geothermal brines. We were working as a group comparing kind of lithium and sodium extraction and developed a Python model to calculate the capital expenditure and operating expenditure for these extractions. And I really learned a lot about kind of the surrounding issues of where the materials we use in batteries come from. So some of my key takeaways. As you might have spotted, I did this in 2021, which was the height of COVID. So this project was remote and I actually never went to Imperial, which is actually quite sad. It did mean that most of the projects were actually kind of computational and coding based. So for me, it involved, as I said, a lot of Python coding, which I actually really enjoyed. And it was also the first time working in an academic setting, having regular kind of group meetings, but being given a lot of freedom to do your research and learn a lot about batteries. And it was my first contact as well with the Faraday Institution and the wider Faraday Institution network, which I really enjoyed. This experience then led me to go on to do my master's project in computational chemistry because I actually really enjoyed the coding. And I was working on computational investigation of novel solid-state electrolyte called lithium tantalum phosphate. So quick detour into solid-state batteries. So for solid-state batteries, we use a solid-state electrolyte rather than an often flammable liquid electrolyte to make batteries safer, but also to potentially be able to use a lithium metal anode, which a liquid electrolyte would be unstable against, which increases the performance of the battery. However, often solid-state electrolytes, because they're solid and you still need your ions to move between your anode and cathode, is actually quite difficult in a solid, and the conductivity is not as good. So that's one of the things that we try to understand with computational modeling, the pathways and how to potentially improve it. And that's also what I was doing with this project. So we first kind of want to get a good description of the bulk structure, which you can see here. And then what I also looked at was doing some boron doping and how it would affect the energy and the stability of the system. Again, some takeaways I got from this project. So I learned a lot about the computational methods used kind of on the chemistry scale. And it was also a first introduction to all solid-state batteries and solid electrolytes. And because the project spanned a whole year as well, I was also learning a lot about longer time planning of research. And one of the things I had to learn was it's very important to set realistic targets because it always takes longer than you think. With these experiences and still being quite passionate about batteries and enjoying the promises of solid-state batteries, I found the project very much related at the University of Warwick, and with those previous experiences with the FUSE internship and having learned a lot about the methods already, I managed to get a PhD at the University of Warwick, where I still am at the moment. So one quick slide about the science. If you have any more questions, do reach out or let me know later. So I'm still looking at solid-state batteries, but I'm now specifically looking at the interface between lithium metal and a different solid-state electrolyte called lithium aggradite. Because as it turns out, a lot of the solid-state electrolytes that have good conductivity aren't stable against lithium metal and also kind of degrade. And what you can see here on the right is that over time, you get this ordered layer, solid electrolyte interface forming also in solid-state batteries. It's a very common or well-known phenomenon in liquid batteries, but not as well understood in solid-state batteries. So to kind of get to this point, we again need a good description of the bulk structures and then create our representative interface models, putting them together. I use some machine learning to get kind of these bigger cells that you can see here because the chemistry methods are very limited in terms of length and time scale, and then ran simulations to do the diffusion, to look at lithium diffusion and the SEI growth. And one of the things we can see here, this is for the bulk structure, is that there's a bit of disorder in the system. And with some of the simulations we do, we can basically track the lithium ion pathways and can see how they move in the system and can use that understanding to improve the batteries further. A little bit more background about the PhD environment I'm in. So I'm part of the HETSYS CDT. A CDT is a Center for Doctoral Training, and HETSYS stands for Computational Modeling of Heterogeneous Systems. So it's basically a training program which spans disciplines on the right here: physics, chemistry, maths engineering. And they take in around 10 plus minus 2 kind of students per year who form a cohort. I'm currently member of cohort 4, and there are 8 cohorts. Or next year cohort 8 is starting. We undergo some training specifically on computational modeling on various scales together. On the very left, on the top, you can see a picture taken at our annual research conference where we all have to give presentations. And it's just a very rewarding environment to learn in, to support people who have slightly different applications, but still understand quite a lot of your research. It can be really helpful. So it was a very supportive environment. I was very lucky to get a PhD project funded by them. And on top of that, I also have the Faraday network because I'm also part of the Faraday Institution PhD enrichment scheme, which was provided by the Faraday during the time where they weren't sponsoring like PhD projects themselves. They still wanted to give the opportunity of that training to PhD students in the battery field. And we do things like look at Diamond, which is one of the national facilities. We had visits to different industries, UK big. We did some STEM outreach. And also every now and then we get to look at an electric vehicle, which was pretty cool. And we do a lot of training. That spans battery training, battery-related training, but also a lot of soft skills, interview skills, project management, lots of things that will be very useful during your PhD and after, whichever direction you decide to go down. Dom, when asking us to give these presentations, kind of always asks for a typical day in the life. And I can't really give that as most people, but I'd seen this graphic on LinkedIn a few times and it really resonated with me because what people think about when they think about a PhD is the science, the publications, maybe the thesis in the end you get out. But what you get actually out of a PhD is so much more. There's so many more things you need to do on a day-to-day basis, but also so much more you learn. And that's what's going to actually make you employable in the future. So while most of the time you'll find me on my desk looking at crystal structures and doing some coding, I'm also involved in a lot of other things. I do some teaching. I was involved with the heads of SSLC. I have regular meetings, I attend seminars, you have to read papers to stay up to date with literature. And if you want to go to conferences, you have to write the abstracts. And when you get accepted, prepare the posters or a talk, and then actually go to the conferences to present your work, which is one of the best parts of doing a PhD, I would say. A typical day in my life might also actually include something like this. I play volleyball, I have during my whole time at university. I also enjoy a park run on a Saturday. I love books, I love reading, and I love a good coffee. I enjoy games night. We have a regular postgraduate games night organized from the chemistry department. And I also enjoy some of the concerts that are put on by students at the art center here. So what I want to highlight here is mainly, it's very important to have a work-life balance. And have things outside your PhD because in the end it's a marathon and not a sprint. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up. I'm not gonna go through all of them, but 2 things never to ask a final year PhD student is, have you started writing your thesis? I kind of have. And what you're gonna do next? I haven't figured that out really, but here's some of my views of academia and what's good, like flexible working style, doing your own research, but also it's a lot more difficult in terms of finding a permanent position and a lot of pressure to comparing to industry, where I think it's a lot more stable, you get better pay. And what Christian said really nicely, you work as a team towards one single goal, but there's a lot more hierarchy. You do the work for, to create money or for a customer, which doesn't resonate with everyone, and it can get a bit more repetitive. So I haven't quite decided yet. These are just some thoughts I have at the moment, which I'm going to leave you with. Thank you so much for listening. Do connect on LinkedIn if you have any questions. And I think that's it for me. I'm going to stop sharing and hand over to Dom for a second to talk about some of the opportunities coming up and within the Faraday Institution.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chantal, and actually all of our speakers. It's so nice to see Everyone giving a really kind of good overview of the battery sector, and hopefully many of you have found it super useful as well. So I thought I'd just give a bit of an overview of some of the opportunities that are linked to the Faraday Institution. I'm Dom Grantley-Smith. I'm head of training and talent development. So I look after all the undergrads programs and postgraduate programs as well, linked to training here as well. We are looking to provide Fuse internships this summer. This means Faraday undergrad summer experiences. These are internships that last about or up to 8 weeks. And they are in our research groups doing research towards the battery sector. So you'll be taking part in real life research. We have 44 internships this year, and we really want to provide the opportunity for you all to gain some research experience, to get a kind of inbuilt idea of what some of the careers are in the energy sector and battery technology. We would like you to increase your knowledge in this area that's not always taught in undergrad degrees, build models, build a network, and hopefully, if it's something you enjoy, hopefully you'll go into the sector as well. We are in a position at this moment in time where we are all government funded, and we are waiting for our funding for post April 2026, which is all financial years. We are still waiting for those funds. As soon as that funding drops, we'll be working with our researchers to get those Fuse programs out for you to apply for. So please bear with us. We think it will be late March, early or April by the time that all comes through. If you do follow us on LinkedIn, you'll be seeing that they'll be all launched there. And if you connect with me as well, we can also highlight those pretty quickly as well. There'll be a website or a web page set up, and you'll be able to go on there, see the job description, and you apply through that way. It's a straightforward process, but it's based on what the universities and the academics would like. So there may be a chance of them asking questions and things. Those job descriptions will go up as time goes by, so you'll be able to see what's on offer there. So what's the eligibility? You've got to be in a undergrad student course at a registered UK university. You've got to take the internship within the first, second, or third year. If you're doing a master's program, you cannot do it at the end of your course, and you can't be a Fuse intern from a previous year. People ask, is there things that they can be to make themselves more eligible? There is down to the academic person, but I would always highlight some of the things that you have done in your applications. Last year we had over 1,000 people apply, so please do put some time into your applications to make sure you stand out. We've also touched on today about PhD opportunities. So there are over 70 PhD opportunities currently on findaphd.com. Which I would encourage you to do it. We're also looking to fund our own PhDs in the future, which will be open, we hope, once our funding has been approved, and further ones will come online. So if you are interested in being part of a huge network with having supportive training schemes that Chantal and Alan touched on, will all be part of the process, and those will go live soon. If you are looking for opportunities, we have a whole page designated to it. So this includes master's programs, PhDs, opportunities to join different schemes. So please do go and have a look there as such. And yeah, we can always draw attention to some of the opportunities there as well. But yeah, there is a current list of master's and PhD opportunities on there if you're interested. If you're still after this talk wondering how on earth you get into the sector, we have built a battery career portfolio. This is a guide that gives you an overview of the battery careers in industry, academia, entrepreneurship, and policy, giving you an overview of how people have done it and people who work in our sector providing that information of what their career portfolio looks like. No one ever has a straight career going from this to this. So it's nice to see people being honest about their views and the different ways that they got to the positions that they are in the sector. It serves as a navigation tool to help you kind of find those areas that you're interested in the battery sector. So yeah, do follow us on LinkedIn. That's where we'll announce anything coming up with Fuse and PhDs. And yeah, do reach out if there are any questions as well. But I'll now hand back to Chantal and the team to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Dom. Yeah, we unfortunately, I think all of us overran a little bit because we're just very excited to talk about our research. But so we're going to try to answer as many of them, or maybe I'm going to see how I can batch them together. Dom, there were a couple more technical questions. I think you probably pretty much answered, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Tanisha's questions about what the application process for the Fuse is and what kind of skills you should have to apply. Definitely, I found mine also on the Faraday website when they were announced, and do follow the LinkedIn. And then as often for the ones you're interested in, there will be criteria from the PhD, from the person providing the project, about how to apply. So there will be more information. I don't know, Alan, if that was the same case for you. Yeah. So yeah, there should be each project will hopefully come with a PDF link or some more information, and then you can choose which ones you're interested in and what you will need to do for those.
As soon as there's a job description for any Fuse, we'll load it up online. So please bear with us as those academics create those JDs for you to apply for.
Perfect. Thank you so much. There was also a question, I'm trying to find it, about, from Kashif asking, as a final year PhD researcher on sodium-ion batteries, kind of interested in any short-term research visitings or collaborative opportunities for international researchers within the Faraday, especially in the sodium-ion battery development. I don't know, Dom, if you can point to the right.
Yes, absolutely. Wherever you are in the stage of your PhD, PDRA, things, there are lots of visiting research fellows positions for certain countries. Your best bet is to go onto the website and have a look at some of our international collaborations and see if there's opportunities there.
Thank you. And then I think I'm gonna just try to give one question to Alan and one to Christian. I'm really sorry if we couldn't answer all the questions. Please connect with us on LinkedIn and ask us if there are any specific questions to us. Okay, Alan, one of the questions was, did you get your PhD before you went into the year out or kind of during that year? And either way, how did you decide where you want to do your research?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Ben. I did not have a secured PhD before I went into my year off. So obviously most people, if they want to go straight into a doctorate after their undergrad, would be doing those applications during their final year. That wasn't something I fancied doing. So while I was on my year off, I was doing those applications. And in terms of how I made the decision, it was a combination of factors. Obviously, a lot of it has to be based on the research and the project, kind of what you're interested in, and then what universities and PIs have the resources and the kind of expertise to support that project. But for me, there was also kind of a lifestyle element of, I like being in London. It's where I grew up, and it's close to my family and friends. So that was also a factor.
Thank you so much. And probably last questions. I think Dom said we might be kicked out, so apologies if that happens. Ben also asked Christian, lots of students want to take part in Formula Students, but sometimes there isn't space. Are there any other extracurricular activities that you would recommend?
Yes, I tried to find the two elements that you get from Formula Student elsewhere. So the interpersonal skills and the management skills and the battery experience. I would try and combine something like roles of responsibility in societies or in other sort of extracurricular organizations with undergraduate research, getting close to the research department where I can then learn the actual battery skills. So I think that's an alternative route if Formula Student doesn't work out, where you have those two sort of combined in the same space.
Cool, thank you so much. I think some of the technical questions that you answered, hopefully you'll find more information on the Faraday website, on the LinkedIn, or if you're specifically electability, can international students do it? Those things. Do reach out to Dom, do reach out to the Faraday if you have any questions. And please, there's a lot of good opportunities with the Faraday. So ask if you're unsure. And hopefully, as I said, reach out to the three of us. We unfortunately ran out of time for more questions, if there are any specific ones. And yeah, thanks all so much for attending. Thanks to my other two speakers for very insightful presentations. Dom and Petra for hosting and putting this great event on. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy the lovely weather outside.